and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Alumni Speaker Series. I'm Julie Lafford, Executive Director for Alumni Engagement at York University. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you in the audience today. It's always a great pleasure to bring so many of our students, alumni, and friends together at one of our many online events. This webinar is part of our highly successful Entrepreneurial Alumni Speaker Series, which is a partnership between two units at York, Innovation York, our incubator, and Alumni Engagement. And this series, features outstanding York alumni, such as today's speaker, Jennifer Huggins. We're pleased to be able to bring these events online following the success of our in-person events that were cut short earlier this year. Before we begin, I want to let you know the exciting news that York is moving forward with our long-awaited Markham Center campus. The campus will accommodate up to 4,200 students in Phase 1, with the flexibility to respond to future growth demands. We'll welcome our first students in the fall of 2023. For more information or for renderings of what the new campus will look like, you can visit markhamcentercampus.yorku.ca. Although we aren't all in the same location, we recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of the university. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Now I'd like to get to know a little about you in the audience. You'll notice a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please type in the city or region where you're located. We're curious to know where people are joining us from. So please, if you'll do that now, I'll give you all a moment to respond. Thanks everyone who participated. It's wonderful to have so many of you here from different geographic locations. Our goal with this event series is to highlight some of the outstanding entrepreneurial alumni who studied at York and give them the opportunity to share their journey and insights with you, discussing their experience as entrepreneurs, exploring their successes, failures, and lessons learned. We hope to inspire and educate a new generation of entrepreneurial changemakers to embark on their own journey. Now I'm pleased to welcome David Kwok, my colleague and Associate Director for Innovation York, who will introduce today's inspiring presenter. Over to you, David.
Thank you so much, Julie. I just want to say welcome to everyone for joining us today on Zoom or Facebook Live. We're so excited to be hosting our second virtual event in the Entrepreneurial Alumni Speaker Series at home, hosted by LaunchU and Alumni Engagement. Kicked off the series about 2 weeks ago with Richard Reiner, who had told us his story about the successes and the unsuccessful technology startups that he's had. And in the past 2 years, we've hosted a lot of series with various speakers sharing their stories and being very candid about their journey in entrepreneurship, which often is not as straightforward as we all think. With everything that we have, we've asked our speakers to really be as candid as they can and share as many of their stories and its reality and help us educate, what are the realities behind the success and what have they learned along the way. These stories really help us really understand the founders in their way of making through the tough storms and building their empires. And we hope that their talk is going to inspire you in your own ways. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to launch a poll and just to get a better understanding of the audience that we have here today, just to understand how many of you are actually working on a venture or thinking about pursuing a venture. So I'm just going to launch the poll. I'm just going to give everyone a couple seconds here to really kind of spend the time to go in and answer the questions. We're extremely curious about how many folks are really thinking about it and see what we can do there. Seems like we're getting quite a few good responses and we're getting on our way there. I'm just going to give everyone a couple more seconds here. Just going to share the results, and I see that it's a pretty split audience. We have about 62% who are thinking about pursuing a venture idea or having a business idea, and we have about 38% who are not, which is okay. And because I think Jennifer has a very inspiring story that is going to inspire us all to really think a little bit differently. So just like our in-person events, I like to encourage everyone to engage. The first half of this will really be Jennifer sharing her story and telling us about all the troubles that she's gone through, but all the success that she's also had. And the other half will be centered on your participation. So we have actually selected a few audience members to participate in the panel, and these individuals will join us at the end of Jennifer's talk to ask their questions. But we will also be turning over to the Q&A portion, looking at the questions that you've asked and hoping to get some of them answered. If you have any issues, please do let us know, but hopefully it's okay and you're able to do the Q&A. I saw many of you posted with your location earlier today, so that's great. If you're watching on Facebook Live, please submit your questions on the comment section and we'll try to get to it as best as we can. But outside of that, I would like to introduce Jennifer Huggins. Jennifer, I'm just going to ask you to come on screen. Jennifer is a very multidimensional entrepreneur who is an inspiration to many of us, including myself. She owns and operates Kingsway Boxing Club in Toronto, and as a 3-star international boxing referee and judge with the International Boxing Association, she understands the sport from the inside out. In addition to being a Canadian national coach at her gym, Jennifer is the founder and executive director of The Fight to End Cancer. She is heavily involved in the community, however, still manages to find the time to travel and perform with a world-class magician. That's right, I said a magician. I just want to say welcome, Jennifer, and we're so glad to have you here today, and we can't wait to hear your story. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Huggins, and I'm so honored to be here with you today. After accepting this opportunity to speak as a York University alumni, I began to realize how big of a deal this really is. Many of you joining today for this talk know me personally, but most of you have no idea who I am, which makes me pretty nervous, I'm not gonna lie. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to meeting all of you and hearing your stories following my talk. Today, I would like to share with you my journey and the impact of living with purpose. But first, have you ever noticed and wondered why every great athlete often has a story of overcoming great adversity? I'm just going to show you guys a screen here. Or some of our greatest leaders have struggled with disabilities and challenges that would paralyze many of us. And though I'm no Einstein, and the rope-a-dope was never my first line of defense, as Muhammad Ali once said, "You don't count the days, you make the days count." When I was 5 years old, I had an Olympic dream, and pursuing it was my purpose. This is also a time when I was diagnosed with severe food allergies. I would later find out that I was one of very few children diagnosed with anaphylaxis in Canada at the time. In the years following, I spent weeks at a time in hospital, battling allergic reactions, asthma, and other illnesses. I grew up worried that I would never have enough time in this world to accomplish my dreams. I learned to hide my weaknesses in order to stop people from feeling uncomfortable. What I didn't realize until very recently was the reality of living with life-threatening challenges would profoundly change my view of the world, or at least the role that I could play in it. My Olympic dreams would come to an immediate halt at 14 years old when I suffered a severe neck injury. I spent the next couple of years recovering and once again, still fearful that people would judge me for my weaknesses. Not having a focus made me feel at loose ends, to say the least. From working in nightclubs to racing motorcycles, that's right, nothing seemed to fill the void left from the absence of competitive sport in my life. I continued to run as fast as I could, filling life with as much as possible, including becoming a student at York University. When I had turned 16, I stepped into the boxing ring and discovered a new passion. Boxing had sparked a fire in me that was laying dormant until I discovered the sport. When I was 18 years old, I decided that riding motorcycles wasn't enough. So I opened a motorcycle shop, of course. Sharing my passion for riding became my new purpose. By 19, I was performing as a professional magician, or actually, I wasn't the magician, but I was performing alongside a professional magician on some of the world's grandest stages and television shows. And though traveling internationally as a performer is amazing, providing unconditional joy to the world now became my mission. When I turned 21, I realized that boxing gave me true purpose and the opportunity to help others find theirs. This is when I opened my first boxing gym. It was also the first time I felt like I was making a real impact with my passion for the sport. Today, Kingsway Boxing has 2 locations offering recreational competitive programs for all ages. In 2011, my business was becoming successful and I became aware of a personal need to give back to the community. This is when the fight to end cancer was born. The success of this movement came from partnering with the community, building a family who have inspired myself and countless others to never fear big challenges or your own weaknesses. From the 5-year-old who raises $20 at a lemonade stand to the corporate moguls rallying the nation, everyone is a part of this fight. Today, we've donated over $1.6 million to cancer research and built an incredible family network worldwide. I love people, and through the fight to end cancer, I have found purpose. In 2014, I was given the opportunity to fast track as an official in Olympic-style boxing. Since then, I've traveled to every continent as a 3-star international judge and referee. However, what compels me to drop everything and volunteer my life to officiate locally and abroad are the athletes. I'm honored to share the ring with the best boxers in the world who have dedicated their entire lives to the sport. Being surrounded by people who are so committed to their passion has had an incredible effect on the life I live. What gets you through some of the worst moments as a boxer is focusing on the next opportunity, getting through that round, or coming back stronger after getting knocked down. This strategy has become the essence of who I am today. At the end of last year, I accepted the position as president of Boxing Ontario, and I'm honored to give back locally to the sport that has given me so much. And minus the motorcycle business, I still wear all of these hats today. And though on paper this looks like an incredible resume, until recently, I had not given thought to the journey, much less sharing it in its totality like this. I'm now realizing that there's no need to hide who you are or what you're made of. Simply embrace the challenges life brings you and find a way to work with and beyond your limitations to find your own purpose. Now, I want you to imagine you're on an airplane, 30,000 feet above sea level. Your throat is closing, you can't breathe. You're certain you're facing the final minutes of your life. What runs through your mind? What do you actually have control over in your life? Do you have regrets? Are you happy with what you've achieved? Are you proud of your purpose? Whew. For me, that was 2 years ago on a flight home from India. And though I experienced more fear than I ever imagined possible, I also found myself more at peace with my reality than I could have ever anticipated. Upon reflection, I later realized that the life I've lived contributed to giving me enough time to survive long enough to make an emergency landing in the UK. Similar to my reliance on doctors and medicine to save my life, as an entrepreneur, I don't do everything by myself. Actually, I do very little by myself. It's important to share your passion and desire with others, enlist support, and be willing to work extremely hard. It's also necessary to surround yourself with people who are far greater and more capable than you are on your own. Though my life purpose has changed and evolved over time, my passion has remained the driving force. Life will always present us with challenges. Maybe it's just life's way of testing our wills, or waking us to possibilities we haven't yet considered. But if you live your life with purpose, your actions may live on forever. So I'll finish with another quote from Muhammad Ali. I'm a boxer, right? Service to others is the rent you pay for your room on this earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I love that quote. I think that quote's amazing. And just even in the Q&A, everyone was just so impressed by your story and all the different things that you're juggling and how you're still able to do everything so well. But at this time, I would also like to invite our entrepreneurs panel to come on screen as they have a lot of questions for you, and we're excited to kind of hear some of those questions. So we have Viraj, the co-founder and chief scientific officer of Lactiga, a biotherapeutic company that developed and patented a new biologic that can help millions of people with immunodeficiencies live a normal life. He's also an entrepreneur that is currently enrolled in our Launch You Accelerator program. So we're extremely close with Viraj. And then we also have Eugene Ting, a York University international student joining us all the way from Malaysia, who is entering his third year majoring in accounting. He's also the co-president of the EDA club at the campus, an entrepreneurship club that is focused on supporting the students. And lastly, we have Maria Lisa Leonti. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry if I'm mispronouncing. Who is a coordinator at Ella, our York University's Accelerator and Community for Women Entrepreneurs. So I would just like to say welcome to everyone. And we're going to kick it off with Viraj. So Viraj, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, David. Jennifer, that's so amazing. And first off, I have a young daughter who's really athletic, so I cannot wait to tell her all about you. And my question is, as you mentioned, when you were younger, I can't think of anyone else who went from like a sports-related injury into boxing. And for everyone starting their own venture, as you did, people close to you are telling you it's risky, it's a bad idea, you're going to get hurt. So the question is, with all that risk, what things helped you know you were on the right path? And then how hard was it to stick with your own goals when the people around you are telling you you're probably making a huge mistake?
Well, you know what? Thank you so much for that question. I think that it does pose a really good thought process that I actually had to go through very recently, because I looked at this journey and I never had to look at it as one thing. But when I looked at it and I saw how much I was doing, I realized that along the way, I had a lot of people who were not very happy with my decisions. And it went from family to coaches to everybody. They thought that I was being very careless. And I think it was a really good time for me to really realize that every decision you make and every pathway you take, there's always a different way to get there. And I think that we're starting to realize that as a society, but when I grew up, and maybe when you guys grew up, it was very much, this is the way to do it, and here's how you get there from A to B. I really have figured out a way from A kind of around through Z, around again. And I think that that's probably the moral of the story, is that there's a different pathway to get to anywhere. And I think surrounding yourself with those people who do give you the constructive advice that maybe it's not the smartest idea, it's sometimes actually very helpful for you to dissect whether it is all the way along the way, which sometimes it wasn't the best idea. Riding motorcycles definitely wasn't the best idea at the time either.
Awesome. Thank you, Viraj. And I love your point, Jennifer. I totally agree. There's so many ways to the end goal. It's just about how you get there and the journey that you take to get there. So thank you so much. Next, we have Eugene, who I'm gonna ask your question to Jennifer.
So hi, Jennifer. And knowing that you have overcome your struggles now and looking back at your career, will you have handled it differently or remain the same approach?
That's an interesting question, because I really feel like we are given what we're given in the moments we're given it. So I think that, I don't really try to look too far into the past to figure out if I would do it too much differently. I think now looking at it, no, I would do it exactly how I've done it. I would make all the mistakes. I know that my parents always said, why can't you just take my advice and, not make these mistakes? It was really painful for the people around me sometimes to watch. But those were the mistakes that brought me to who I am today. And I embrace those mistakes I miss riding. I still miss motorcycle riding. So I think that's the only regret, is I gave up motorcycle riding, but I think I'm still alive here today because I stopped doing that. So no regrets other than not riding my motorcycle.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eugene. And last, we have Maria. I'm just going to get you to ask your question now.
Awesome. Jennifer, it's so nice to meet you, here virtually. And thank you so much for sharing your story. Your passion screams through the screen. But I feel like we relate, because I am someone that is very passionate about a whole bunch of things. And I'm sure there's lots of people on the call as well that feel the same. But the question I want to ask you is, how do you maintain your focus and find that perfect harmony between balance and not burning out? Because I feel like that's something now, especially in COVID-19, we're all feeling. So I'd love to hear your insights on that.
So some people would probably diagnose me. I think there's a couple doctors on here. Viraj, I think you might be a doctor. Some people would diagnose me with ADHD. And I think I actually was officially diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger. They actually tried to medicate me, and I found that made me physically just incapable of doing the things that I wanted to be able to do. So I actually self-unmedicated and found all of these outlets as my way of finding balance. I wouldn't say that this lifestyle is for everybody. I think that there is something to be said for, not being a jack of all trades and a master of none. I try to be a jack of all trades and master all of them. I have started finding balance because I started leaning on a lot more people. I think finding Fight to End Cancer, for me, I found that ability to partner with others and surround myself with people who are so much greater than myself. So I think I've got the support now and surrounded myself with people who can not just, be a cheerleader, but also help me execute some of the goals that I have, many of the goals that I have. I don't think that there's anything that I do on my own anymore. And I'm really proud of that. I think I used to be really proud of the fact that everything was mine. I think it was territorial. I was like, I did this. I'm proud of me for doing this. But now I'm actually far more proud of the fact that I've got other people doing things that are way better than I was doing them. And in some way I can now move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Awesome.
Awesome. I bet we're all wondering, what are you going to do next? What's the next big thing coming from Jennifer? So that's great. We have a couple questions that I see in the Q&A. So I'm just going to go over to the audience questions because that's all the time we have for the panelists. First one, it's around your fight. So the first question is, how many amateur and pro fights did you have?
So I personally never went pro. I never went pro. So amateur, I had only 3 fights amateur. I was so busy and I decided that I was going to open Kingsway Boxing very young, thinking that I was going to go pro because I had a hard time when I first got into boxing, finding people to take me seriously. So my first probably 4 or 5 years of boxing, I went from coach to coach. One of my first coaches actually was Kevin Hurley, who actually has been in touch with me since. And he says, I remember you walked into the gym and you surprised me with all of the energy you had. I didn't expect you to ever take it through to the level that I took it. So I couldn't in the beginning find, and this again speaks to the finding the pathways yourself. I couldn't find the people who would take me to the direction I wanted to go. So I said I was going to open a boxing gym to basically at first be very personal and go pro. And then I realized very quickly that when you open up business, it's not about you anymore. It's about everybody else. So as soon as I opened my business, I basically no longer competed anymore. So I didn't go pro and I'm very, very happy with that. Not because of the dangers of it, but because I wouldn't have had time to put all of that time into myself while doing what I do for the community.
Absolutely. And just leaning into that, we have another question that was just asking you to speak a little bit about more about your charity, Fight to End Cancer. Like what is it there? There was a question around, does it have a piece of technology or what is Fight to End Cancer in itself? If you can just share with us.
So Fight to End Cancer, I'm still trying to define it. Part of my problem with what I do is I let the pathways kind of dictate themselves and lead the way without trying to define them too much in the beginning. In a nutshell, Fight to End Cancer started as an event and we take professionals. So every single one of you guys on this panel should try out for the 2021 fight. We do have most of our fighters already selected because we had to move this fight to next year. But basically the only criteria is you've never fought before. So we take people who are of corporate world and interested in the sport of boxing. And this was my way of kind of gelling everything together, my entertainment life, my boxing life, and my corporate network to be able to put it on one big stage and give back to the community. So essentially you end up, the climax of the actual event is that everybody comes together, they all fight and they all raise funds. They're all fighting against each other, but they're all raising funds for the same cause, which is for the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. And it is open to the world. So it's become so much more than that. We do things all the way into Malaysia, in India. Everyone I meet wants to be a part of it. So we have different, campaigns that run through different countries. So anyone can be a part of the fight. You don't have to actually fight and step in the ring to fight.
That's awesome. I know a couple of our entrepreneurs probably want to get in on that as well. There's quite a few questions coming in, so I want to try to get through as many as I can. So hopefully that's okay. One is, how do you handle destructive criticism?
I think I take it all as constructive criticism. So I absolutely embrace constructive or in some ways what could be destructive criticism far more than I embrace positive. I feel really weird. I don't know if it came from being an athlete, but you only hear when you're doing something wrong, which is probably the way I coach. But you basically, I think for me, if you look at everything constructive, and even if it's someone who's just trying to be mean, they're pointing out something and they're doing you a favor. They're letting you know something that might stand out. In some cases, they might be way off track, but you know what? Take it all in, hear it, and use it constructively in a way that's going to help you progress and move forward, and don't let it destroy you.
Awesome. And we have another one from Sonia, all the way from India, is asking, have you ever faced gender bias attitude from people in the industry that you're in?
All the time. You look at me and you say, oh man, it must be really cool if, getting in the ring with all those girls, you're just refereeing all these girls. I wish I was refereeing all these girls. I actually travel mostly with men. Luckily, there's more women, and I want to encourage more women to get involved. I'm actually very involved with Boxing Ontario for that purpose. But there's a lot of, gender biases. There's also a lot of, even when I am international, I'll be put around, just women because, the men want to feel safe from my presence, depending on what country I'm in. It's a very strange thing I still go through. It's not bad. I look at it as an educational process. I don't want people to feel intimidated. I don't want people to feel like I might be, a problem. So I'm just trying to help educate. And I think we all need to help educate people that we are all just people.
Absolutely. Totally agree. There's another one around, do you find that there are more lines of financing now for entrepreneurs, or is raising capital through private funding perhaps easier? And what was your journey like?
Yeah, you know what? When I first opened my business and when I first started the fight to end cancer, I started as not-for-profit, and I found it really hard to navigate. I still find it very difficult to navigate. Again, that goes towards probably surrounding myself with people who know what to do better than I know myself. I still find private. We do everything for fight to end cancer through private sponsorships. That is the easiest. As long as you as an entrepreneur are a good person and have good values, that is for me the easiest way to go, because you are able to take the funds, show the clients or show the sponsors what you're doing with them, and move forward with them invested directly. I just find that I'm still having a hard time navigating some of the government supports. However, boxing is supported very much by the government. So there is support there. I just haven't quite figured that out yet.
Fair. And, during everything that's happening with COVID, a lot of us were working from home or still working from home, and it's hard to find balance and know when to let things go. So one question from Sherry is, how did you get to the point that you were able to let things go and let other people help you?
I was forced into it. I think my very first year for Fight to End Cancer, what I didn't include was I put myself in hospital that year with, I guess my blood pressure was through the roof. It was pretty much close to having a heart attack, and I was at the time 27 years old. So I realized at that point, not because anyone told me and not because, it was this like great idea, I realized I couldn't do it by myself. So I was forced into partnering, and I realized after partnering, oh my gosh, I've been missing out on a huge part of life, and I've been missing out on a huge part of what business actually represents. It's not about yourself. It's about the world. So I'm just, I think, lucky that I had that opportunity and didn't die from it. So.
No, totally agree, and it's always important to have that balance. The next one is a bit of a long-winded one, so I'm gonna read it out to you. Was there ever a time in your journey that you were unsure what the next step should be? If so, how did you make that decision? If not, how could you be so sure in your next step? Also, what was the degree that you did at York, and how was it useful for you during your journey? And do you think you could get where you have gone to without the degree?
That is okay. Let me know if I go off track or if I miss any of the questions, but okay, just try to take that all in. The beginning part of the question was, if you can just repeat, sorry.
Just the beginning is how were you, when you were starting your journey, how did you know what was the next step? And did you know that should be the next step?
So what I can relate it to right now is I have not always known the right way to go, and I've not also always been absolutely sure of it. The best example is right now. I am in the middle of a pandemic with the rest of the world, and I own a business, and I own a business that has multiple locations and has multiple people relying on me for the money that I pay them. I wasn't sure that in this moment, continuing my business was a good idea. We don't know where it's going. I have no idea, even right now, if it's going to work out. But I do know that my passion and my love and my joy and what comes out of the moment, each moment, day by day, by continuing to fight forward and fight for my business and keep both locations open, which I still have, it feels right. And it may not be right at the end, but it may not be right in the sense I may lose. I've made the decision that even if I lose all of the businesses, even if I lose everything, I feel like I've given my all, and I think that the community deserves that. I think they deserve and that is the only thing guiding me. I think that just the values that I hold for the community is what keeps me driving forward. I went to York University for kinesiology. I was minoring in psychology. I actually had a really hard time making it through. I ended up just Bachelor of Arts, and I couldn't find my way through the memorization. I think you guys probably noticed I had to read a lot of what I read today because I might be the ADD, but I lose track very easily. So it was a really tough role for me to get through university, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I do believe that even without it, I'm a fighter. I think through and through, that's just who I am to the core. And I think that I would have found my way through, and I still had to find my way through a lot of things that I guess learned from school, but also would have just learned from making the mistakes. So absolutely going to school and, getting an education and learning in a way that's not your comfort zone is probably one of the biggest life skills that I've developed. But at the same time, I still move forward in a way that, just keep throwing it at me and I'll figure it out. And I think that's the only thing you guys have to, because I know a lot of people start down one path and fail. And for me, that's not failure. That's just kind of, okay, didn't work. Let's move on to the other direction that you can get to the end result you're looking for.
Perfect. I know we're at time, but there's so many questions coming in. I hope it's okay that we keep you on for a couple more minutes. For those of you who can't stay past longer, please feel free to hop off. And thank you so much for joining us. But I'm going to ask you one more question. And there's actually a couple questions I think could be like a rapid fire style. So I'm going to rapid fire at you at the very end. But the next question that we have is from Avesta. So she said, sometimes it's really hard to keep up your motivation. For her, she's trying to create purpose and have childhood dreams. But as soon as they start, sometimes they're just struggling to kind of keep their interest in the activity itself. So how did you keep your motivations and kind of interest and activity going, even through all the hardships that you've had?
I think I set goalposts, and I don't only set those goalposts for myself, I put them up publicly. So this one was a big one for me. I was not comfortable with doing a talk about myself in this capacity. So I gave you guys my bio, and I gave you the bio of the talk, and I had to work my way backward. And because I'd already committed to it, I'm very committed. So if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So the best thing you can do, set the goalpost, set a date, and make it happen.
I love that. Put it out into the universe and see what happens and make people keep you accountable. So I'm just going to go in a couple of rapid fire because I feel like these ones could be rapid fire. So would you be open to mentoring younger people in the sport business?
Absolutely. Reach out to me.
And then the next one is, if there was a rematch between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, who would win?
Mayweather is the only one who did win, and he's the only one who could win. It's boxing. You can't throw a tennis player into boxing and say who's going to win. So it's going to always be Mayweather.
I love it. And then the last one, Tyson versus Jones. Who's going to win?
You know what, if it was, so it's an exhibition fight. So if it was a real fight, I think I would have to put my money on Tyson, just because Tyson is a beast. He has an incredible story, actually. I would love one day if I could ever really get Spike Lee behind me like he did. The One Man Show, if you ever have a chance to go watch that guy, he is a fighter through and through, and that's all he knows. So he will just keep fighting till the very end. And I have seen Roy Jones' feet up in the air recently. I think he got, I forget, I'm going to get in trouble for not knowing the last time he got knocked down, but I'm going to go Tyson on this one, even though I love Roy Jones.
For sure. No, but that's awesome. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining, for being on the call today and sharing your story and answering all those questions. There was a ton of questions. There's still a ton of questions, but I just want to be mindful of time for everyone. But thank you so much for sharing your story. I thought it was extremely inspirational, all the things that you shared, and thank you for being vulnerable and telling us the side that, typically people don't get to hear about. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone for joining us for the Entrepreneurial Alumni Speaker Series at home. This has been an amazing opportunity for folks like Jennifer to share and really inspire individuals to kind of be a part of the community and come out and join us. I also like to thank Alumni Engagement for working with us to bring the showcase to life and show all the entrepreneurial alumni that have come out of York University. We really hope that you are all inspired by Jennifer's story, and that if you're looking to start your own entrepreneurial journey or understand what that might look like, reach out to Launch You. We're the on-campus entrepreneurship unit at the university, where we offer free programming and services and events to support students, alumni, and the external community in helping them bring their ideas to life. And next, I just want to encourage everyone today to share the talk with your friends. Let them know. It will be posted on our social media channels, and you can follow us for more information there. We also ask that each of you take about 1 minute to complete our survey about your experience today. The survey link can be found in the chat box, and we will also email it to you shortly. This will allow us to just continually improve the events that we're putting together for you as the audience. And then lastly, we really hope that you can all join us for our next event in the series that will be taking live in about 2 weeks from now on Thursday, August 20th at noon, featuring Abdin Masarat Aga, who is a digital pioneer who is the CEO and founder of Northern. So thank you everyone for joining us. This has been great, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much.